At 12:04 UTC on August 11, 2025, the calm waters near Scarborough Shoal suddenly explode into chaos. Just 12 nautical miles from the reef, the Philippine Coast Guard cutter BRP Suluan is heading north, guarding two tiny relief boats piled high with food and fuel meant for local fishermen. But right behind her, the Chinese Coast Guard ship CCG-3104 is rushing in, fast. Its water cannon is already blasting away, streams of water cracking across the Suluan's bow like whips made of liquid. At this distance, those jets hit hard enough to smash glass or even send sailors tumbling to the deck. But the real danger hasn't even arrived yet. Off to the port side, an enormous shadow is cutting through the waves. It's the People's Liberation Army Navy destroyer, hull number 164. And this beast isn't here for crowd control. This one is built for war, and it's charging fast into contested waters. Suddenly, three ships are tightening into a deadly triangle at sea. The CCG-3104's captain, eyes locked on the Suluan, jerks the wheel hard to intercept. The destroyer, unaware of this move, holds steady on course. Two ships barreling toward each other seconds away from impact. Out here, one mistake is all it takes, and soon no one can explain why two ships flying the same flag look ready to smash into one another. Scarborough Shoal might just look like a ring of shallow reefs and turquoise water, but in the South China Sea, it's a ticking time bomb. Only 124 nautical miles from Luzon, it sits squarely inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. And yes, both countries signed that treaty. On paper, it belongs to the Philippines. But back in 2012, Chinese ships muscled in and never left. Since then, Beijing has enforced its claim with rotating Coast Guard cutters, fishing militia boats, and whenever it wants to send a message, full-on warships. On August 11th, the Suluan's orders were plain and simple: escort the relief boats near the shoal, drop off food and fuel, and return. But everyone knew what would happen. Any Philippine ship that drifts this close ends up shadowed and usually harassed by Chinese forces. That's why the CCG-3104 was already on the chase. And as for the destroyer with hull number 164, that ship wasn't there for diplomacy. It was a Luoyang 3-class guided missile destroyer, bristling with vertical launch cells, anti-ship missiles, and long-range radar. Normally, warships like that sail in formation, but this one cruising so close to a Coast Guard cutter hinted at a layered blockade. Theoretically, ships under the same flag should coordinate to avoid accidents. But at high speeds, with tempers flaring and radios silent, the rules tend to drift away from reality. The second the BRP Suluan cleared the shoal's shadow, the chase kicked off. The 1,500-ton CCG-3104 slammed its twin diesels into overdrive, throwing up spray as it lunged after the Philippine patrol ship. The mission was obvious: harass the Suluan and stop the slow-moving civilian boats she was shielding. The water cannon screamed alive, hammering high-pressure streams across decks, strong enough to knock someone overboard, rip off antennas, shatter windows, or flood open compartments. Officially non-lethal, but at close range, dangerously destructive. For the Suluan's crew, every jet of water meant ducking behind armored shields and bracing against the rolling sea. But this time, the Chinese cutter changed its tactic. Instead of tailing from behind, the captain swung wide to port, aiming to slice across the bow. A textbook interception meant to force a ship off course. At nearly 20 knots, even the smallest error could be disastrous. Radio calls from the Suluan went unanswered. The Chinese siren wailed, mixing with the hiss of the water cannons as the distance shrank quickly. The Suluan kept steady, careful not to do anything that could be painted as hostile. And then came the fatal mistake. Through the haze of spray, the massive PLA Navy destroyer loomed. The cutter's intercept wasn't just crossing the Suluan's line, it was cutting straight into the destroyer's path. The Chinese captain, laser-focused on the chase, didn't realize just how little room there was. By the time the destroyer's crew saw the danger and blasted warning signals, it was too late. The cutter's bow sliced across the destroyer's port side and slammed in head first. The crash was brutal. Steel at the cutter's bow folded like paper punched by a fist. The forward gun mount was twisted, its shield warped. Bulkheads groaned and bent. The destroyer got off lighter, just jagged scars down its port side, paint stripped to bare metal. But the shudder rippled through her frame, rattling fittings and tossing crewmen from their posts. Just moments before, several of the cutter's crew had been leaning over deck rails. When the bow crumpled, they vanished. No one knew if they were injured or just thrown clear. The next seconds were chaos. The destroyer's horn blasted. The cutter's engines died. Over the radio, the Suluan immediately offered help. Medical aid, man overboard search, damage control. Every call was met with silence. Slowly, the destroyer backed away. The cutter sagged low in the water, bow buried, lifeless in the waves. On paper, it wasn't seaworthy anymore. In reality, it was finished. A Chinese pursuit had ended not with intimidation, but with their own cutter crippled right in front of the ship they were trying to threaten. On the Suluan's deck, disbelief swept the crew. Just minutes earlier, they had braced for another punishing blast of water. Instead, they'd just witnessed the Chinese cutter plow into its own Navy's destroyer, the crash booming across the sea like a drum. Through binoculars, Philippine officers saw Chinese sailors stumble, grab for rails, some even disappear behind the mangled bow. Unlike a warship, the cutter's crew weren't wearing heavy safety gear. At that speed, a sudden stop could toss a man clear off the deck. Within seconds, the Suluan's radio operator broadcast on open channels. Chinese vessel, we can provide medical assistance. We can assist with search and rescue silence. They repeated the call in both English and Mandarin. Still nothing. On the destroyer's scarred port side, teams inspected the gashes. On the cutter, crew slowly moved aft, away from the wrecked bow. From the Philippine view, the refusal to accept help said it all. Taking aid from the very ship you were chasing would be humiliating. Better to deal with it internally, even if injured sailors were losing precious minutes. Meanwhile, the relief boats slipped away, unseen, their simple job of delivering food and fuel overshadowed by the spectacle of an international embarrassment. For the Chinese, there was no hiding the truth. Their aggressive intercept had ended in a humiliating collision, all in plain view. Within hours, Manila hit back. Philippine Coast Guard spokesman Commodore J. Terriella blasted the incident as reckless and absurd, accusing the Chinese cutter's captain of violating COLREGS, the global rules meant to stop collisions at sea. He stressed it wasn't just careless, it put lives at risk on all three ships and could have sparked a bigger crisis. Terriella confirmed the Suluan had immediately offered help after the crash. We offered aid, medical search and rescue. They refused. That says everything, he told reporters. For the Philippines, that refusal fit perfectly into their message. China would risk lives just to save face. In Beijing, the response was very different. Chinese Coast Guard spokesman Gan Yu admitted there'd been a maritime encounter, but never mentioned a collision. Instead, he framed it as routine: monitoring, pressing, blocking, controlling. Actions China calls lawful enforcement inside its waters. Not a single photo of the wrecked cutter appeared in Chinese state media. The next day, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. made it clear their ships weren't going anywhere. We will not be deterred. These are our fishermen, our seas, and our duty, he told reporters. For the rest of the world, the contrast was stark. Manila spoke of a near disaster. Beijing brushed it off as a normal patrol. Diplomats kept quiet. No joint probe, no hotline call, not even a public statement from either navy. And in the South China Sea, silence after an incident often says more than words. This silence was deafening. Scarborough Shoal isn't just some reef, it's a chess piece in one of the busiest trade arteries in the world. It lies within the Philippines' 200 nautical mile zone, but China has locked it down since 2012 with constant patrols and fishing militias. In 2016, an international tribunal flatly ruled China's claim invalid under maritime law. Beijing shrugged it off. For Manila, every patrol near the shoal is a reminder. They will not give up what's theirs under international law. For Beijing, every interception says the same thing. Control belongs to the ships in the water, not the rulings in The Hague. The August 11th crash was just one more episode in a long string of clashes, and it won't be the last. In recent years, Chinese cutters have used lasers to blind Philippine sailors, blocked resupply missions in the Spratlys, even rammed fishing boats. Each time, Beijing insists it's just enforcing its sovereignty. Scarborough Shoal is extra sensitive because of its location near vital shipping lanes. The South China Sea carries more than 60% of world trade. around $3.4 trillion worth of goods every year. Tankers, container ships, bulk carriers, thousands pass daily. A conflict here wouldn't just hit China and the Philippines, it would shake the entire global economy. The military stakes are just as big. China's network of fortified artificial islands, runways, radars, missile batteries already casts a huge shadow. From those outposts, Beijing can watch, and if it wants, control massive parts of the sea. If Scarborough Shoal were built up the same way, that reach would push even closer to the Philippines. It's all part of gray zone tactics, showing control without firing shots, water cannons instead of gunfire, ramming instead of missiles. The August 11th collision wasn't planned, but it happened in the middle of this dangerous cat-and-mouse game where every move tests the other side's will. Beijing will likely bury the incident. Manila will add it to a growing record of grievances. And the sailors? They'll never forget. At sea, when steel slams steel, it stays with you. The South China Sea has seen decades of near misses. Jets buzzing cockpits, warships crossing bows, fishing boats rammed in the dark. But rarely does the danger turn inward. August 11th proved that even in the rush to intimidate, discipline can crumble. So now the question hangs, was it just an accident born of arrogance or a bullying tactic gone wrong? Tell us what you think in the comments. And if you want to back the channel and help us surface more stories like this, join the fleet by clicking that join button on our page. Thanks for sticking around. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into the world's most intense maritime encounters. And remember, out here, it's not the size of your ship that matters. It's whether you're steering it in the right direction. See you in the next one.